What's up, everybody? Welcome to Just Breathing Live. And I'm not in a undisclosed location with a wall behind me. I'm now back in the studio for Just Breathing Live. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So yeah, it's been pretty great. I actually have internet in this room, so we are actually able to go live from this space, and that is good news. That is good news. So yeah, hope your week has been going good so far. Mine has been interesting. I think life has just been interesting right now for me, and that's the best, most positive way that I can describe life right now. I am in the midst of a lot of transition in my life, and that's like transition that is happening and transition that is going to happen. But anybody that's been through transition knows that transition happens a lot further before the actual move takes place. So a lot of moving parts in my life right now. A lot of things happening. Good things though. I think and I believe that everything is for a reason. I don't like everything happening in my life right now, so I'm choosing to believe, and that's why I use that terminology, because you can either let your life dominate you or choose to believe that there's a purpose behind it and then go create purpose in your own life. And that's what I'm choosing to do, is to just believe that there's something behind where I'm at right now to get me where I want to go, and the thing that I'm creating, the thing that I'm working towards later on. So that's where I'm at right now. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. Mostly because I want to, mostly because I love doing this and I love talking, and I want to get better at talking. And I say this in almost every stream, and I'm sorry if it bothers some people, but this is practice. Anybody that does this or starts a podcast or is a YouTuber knows that you have to do more things to get better at that thing. And that's, I think, every single facet of life, but it's the same here. So I'm trying to do these live streams so that I can get better at regular podcasting when I have a guest, or I'm talking just with somebody else and have to kind of keep that conversation alive and ask good questions and all that type of stuff. That's going to be improved by me talking more. I did see something the other day that was really interesting too. It said that if you read, or the more you read, the better you'll be at conversation, and the better you'll be at just speaking in general. And I thought that was a really interesting fact. And it makes sense to me because I know, so recently I've been trying to make sure I'm a part of my kids' bedtime, because I do have a lot of things going on in my life. I have my full-time job, my part-time job, and things that I'm trying to build on my own. So I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I really want to make sure that I'm investing in my kids and giving them quality time. So one of the things that I decided to do was to read to them before bed. And it's not an every night thing. Sometimes we get home from something late, or things happen, but I try to be consistent. If we have time and I'm putting them to bed, I'm going to read to them. So that way they're all gathered around, we're close, and I get to invest something into them. And my best investment that I could put into a kid is give them J.R.R. Tolkien. And so we're reading through The Hobbit right now, which is honestly maybe my favorite book from Tolkien. I love Lord of the Rings as well. Obviously, anybody that's read it or watched it knows how dense it is. I am super into the lore and into the appendices of the Lord of the Rings. I could go toe to toe with anybody on that. I've read and listened to it on audiobook many, many times. But I think The Hobbit, even though it was written as a children's book, which if you read The Hobbit is crazy to think about that that's a children's book, I think that might be my favorite book I've read the Silmarillion. I've read the Children of Hurin. I've read, you know, so many of the other books in the Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth realm. And The Hobbit might be my favorite. So I really wanted to start with that with my kids. Probably should have started with like Chronicles of Narnia or something. They are listening to those on audiobook. So that was kind of covered. So I decided I'm going to read The Hobbit to them. And it's been interesting because it's not, like I said, it was written as a children's book. It was reviewed, I think the publisher's son, the original publisher of The Hobbit's son, read it, kind of said this is a good book for this age range, which is just mind-blowing that kids back then were reading books for their parents who were the publishers and saying, what age group would enjoy this book? What did you think of it? Give me your thoughts and review. Wild what kids were able to do back then compared to now. But anyways, so this kid thought it was like, you know, maybe 10-year-olds. And I see by reading it, you know, my oldest son is only 7 right now. And I do see that some of the language, some of the descriptions, some of the ways that, you know, Tolkien paints the picture of where the characters are at and what they're doing. My kids just don't know what's going on some of the times. But even so, it's been so cool to read something that forces them to use their imagination, even if they don't know every word, because they use a lot of big words in the book. I can either define it for them and then they're like, okay, all right, I know where I'm at now. Or they're just able to get the context and make up their own imaginative story and build out that world in their minds from just what they get from it at this time. And I think that's going to be really helpful for their development. I think it's going to be really helpful for them to just develop their intellect, develop their vocabulary, because they're learning these new words, many of which are not used even by adults in common language now, because we've lost so much of our vocabulary. But I don't know. I think it's really good. And the reason I'm telling you that story is to go back to the first point of reading as a tool to help you in your speaking abilities, because I really think it's helped me. I didn't realize until because I'm reading it out loud to them, obviously, and I didn't realize how bad my reading had gotten until I started reading this. Not that I couldn't read the words or forgot how to say certain words. It wasn't anything like that, but I just wasn't very good at reading anymore, because most of the things that I do is audio form. All of the books that I read, I'll read a couple paper books here and there throughout the year, but most of my reading is done through audio, which is good because I learn better that way. I'm an auditory person, but I didn't realize how bad I had become at being able to see a page and read the words on there effectively. And it's been good because you have to kind of, all right, I got to read ahead a little bit so I know what's coming, so it comes out clear, and I'm not skipping words, and I'm not fumbling over words, and I'm not just being a jumbled mess when I'm reading to my kids, because then they're really not going to know what's happening. I want to be clear so that I can paint the picture well. So, yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I think it's a good thing for my kids to read with them, and I think it's a good thing for just general speaking abilities. So, yeah, that was cool. So I just wanted to get into a couple things tonight that I thought would just be interesting. And like always, you know, while we're live on these podcasts, from 6 till whenever, it depends on, you know, if we start getting people on here that are listening to this and watching this and want to post their topics or questions in the comments, feel free to do that. And I'll talk about it. Nothing's really off limits unless you're going to try to say something to get me kicked off of YouTube. And then I might skip it. I could see that happening. But yeah, I until that time, I'm gonna bring little topics of things that I've been thinking about either during the week or just things that are going on in the world right now, and we'll just kind of talk about those until I get tired of that, and then we move on. So, one of the things I was just bringing up notes because I was gonna make some notes about different things to talk about tonight. And one of the things that popped up was actually from I have a mentor that I've been working with for a while now, and it's been really great to have somebody older than me that's able to kind of invest some wisdom when I'm going through things that just don't make sense at first. To have somebody be like, "Yeah, I went through that too. You're not the first to go through it. You're not alone in your feelings. It's natural," and that's been cool. And one of the sessions that we had, a deeper session where we talked for many hours. Um, I made this note because I deal with a lot of anger issues, and it's interesting because I never really dealt with a lot of anger issues until maybe this year and this past year, and stress and frustration and different things have just sort of caused that to rise to the surface. And honestly, it's annoying because I don't want to deal with that. Well, that's some of my problem, right? But I don't really want anger in my life because it's annoying. It's something that I can see when I'm angry, and like I can look at myself from a an outside perspective, and I know that I'm angry, and I know that I'm out of line, maybe in something that I'm saying or something that I'm doing, in my reaction to something, and I am totally aware of it, but for whatever reason, I can't help myself. I need to be angry. Um, so yeah, that's been annoying, and that's the best word that I can think to describe it in my life. But one of the things that we discussed when we were in this one session was he said anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. So meaning that anger always stems from another emotion. I may have talked about this before, but eh, anger stems from either fear, frustration, or hurt. And that really struck me because it gave voice to some of the questions that I was having in regards to my own anger. Like, why am I acting this way? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I saying these things? Why am I feeling these things? I know that I'm angry and I don't want to be, so why can't I just stop? And I once he said this, I was like, oh, so there might be some like other things going on here that are affecting me in life that is just feeding into and displaying themselves as anger because I haven't either acknowledged those things or dealt with those things or um yeah, I just maybe didn't know that thing existed as that. So for example, like fear. I definitely, like I said at the beginning, I'm going through a lot of transition in my life where I'm preparing for transition. I'm working towards transition. I am transitioning in aspects of my life. And there's a lot of fear that comes with that. There's a lot of fear that comes with the unknown. There's a lot of fear that comes with um, just the lack of control sometimes that I have when it comes to dictating what happens in my own life and dictating um how things are going to turn out. Are they going to turn out exactly how I planned and wanted them to turn out, or are they just uh, I don't know. I don't know. The unknown is scary. And sometimes when you feel like you're not in control and you feel like the unknown is just weighing on you too much, you become afraid. And it's not easy to deal with fear. I think fear is probably the hardest thing to actually deal with. And you can see examples of this through, what's happening in our country, just in terms of the political chaos, the racial chaos, the um, medical and pandemic related chaos. Uh, it created a lot of fear, and what you saw when people were fearful was a lot of raging, crazy people. And I feel like I do that sometimes. Is I'm fearful, and so I'm a raging crazy person in other aspects of my life that have nothing to do with that. But I'm taking that emotion and I don't know how to deal with it, so it's going to come out in this way as anger in this situation. So I think that's an example of how a primary emotion like fear shows itself as anger in other areas of your life. And the same thing's true with frustration. I have a lot of frustration. I feel like some people have gotten things that I deserve. Now, if I actually reflected on it, I know that they worked harder for those things in many of those cases and they deserve those things in actuality, but I feel like, but I'm talented and I'm this or I'm that. I should have that. And right or wrong, it's frustrating. It's easy to get frustrated with that type of stuff. And then in that frustration, in another area of my life, it shows itself as anger, just because I didn't get what I wanted or feel like I didn't get my fair shot at whatever it is. So, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know maybe if that's helpful for somebody out there that maybe is dealing with anger issues and feel like they're just raging and don't know why, or they're just blowing up on people for seemingly no reason. And I don't think there's ever not a reason. I think it's just something that probably is hidden, that your anger is hiding a primary emotion. So it's a secondary emotion hiding a primary emotion like fear, frustration, or hurt. Someone hurts you, you don't know how to deal with that. You don't know how to forgive yourself or forgive them. You don't know how to fill in the blank of whatever hurt you have in your life. And that's going to come out in anger. And yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. And I definitely am not doing a good job at dealing with that right now in my life. So I'm working on that. All the while, doing all the working towards still the things that I want to transition into and do later in my life. So life's tough, man. Life is tough. Life's tough. All right, let's talk about something else that I'm frustrated about. Just kidding. Um, no, but there is something happening tonight. I think it's happening like at midnight tonight, and it will be out tomorrow. And that is the new. Here we go back to Tolkien. Rings of Power show. Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I think premieres tonight. This is Wednesday when I'm recording this and streaming this. It goes out at midnight, so Thursday is when they're releasing the Rings of Power. And yeah, man, I don't know how to feel about this, quite honestly. Like, I really don't know how to feel about this show. I'm not a fan of it. I'll be open and honest and transparent that I think from the interviews that I've seen with the showrunners, with the actors, with the everyone sort of surrounding this show, I think it's going to be complete trash. I think the actors have a ideological agenda that they hope to have come through in their performances, which completely negates anything that Tolkien would be a fan of, because he was so against having allegory and inputting ideology into his stories. And I know people are like, well, that's ridiculous because obviously there's so much allegory in Lord of the Rings. And yeah, you can always pull allegory out, but that wasn't the purpose of writing the books. People tried to put on allegory, like put on the fact that, Tolkien does reference, and this was actually in The Hobbit, but does reference like tanks, or what could be interpreted as tanks or modern war weapons, and his sort of distaste for them. That's real. I don't think even Tolkien would deny that he had like those little nuggets in there that sort of spoke to what he thought about power and war and evil and good and all that type of stuff. But for the most part, he tried to stay away from that. So when I hear a lot of the actors in this new Rings of Power show talking about the fact that, there's so much diversity in the show and female empowerment, and they're just running around spewing a lot of ideological verbiage that isn't very well thought through and is very, it's by the book. It's by the book. You're trained to speak in certain ways and say certain things, and they've been doing a great job of that and staying consistent in that verbiage, and they're getting praised for that by some. Real Tolkien fans are just worried. They hear that type of stuff and they're just like, but what about Tolkien? Like, that's the most amazing part to me, is where's Tolkien in all of this conversation? All I hear is all of the new things that are going and the new ways that they're evolving Tolkien's work and bringing it up into modern times and making it relevant for a modern audience. But then make another fantasy film. Like, and I've said this before on these streams, I would be okay if they just made a Lord of the Rings adaptation, like, which I think they kind of ended on. So maybe I should kind of step back a little bit from some of my comments on the show, because they have sort of slowly, as people have gotten more and more frustrated, as trailers have come out, as interviews have come out, as articles have come out, people have been like, where's Tolkien in all of this? And they've gone from like, this is like straight Silmarillion adaptation to like, I think now they're just saying based on the work of Tolkien, which, okay, I agree with that. This is an adaptation that is based on maybe some of the characters that Tolkien developed, but like, please then just stay completely away from the lore and don't touch it. Don't do anything with it, because I don't want to be a part of that. Do your own thing. Make another fantasy show with elves and dwarves and whatever other races of Lord of the Rings type characters you bought the rights to. I'm fine with that. Call them all of those things. Like, they have hobbits in this show, but they're called Harfoots. They're not hobbits because they don't actually have the rights to be able to use the term hobbits in this show. So they're called Harfoots. They're hobbits. It's just like little things like that. I don't know. It doesn't bode well for the show. And so there's already reviews coming out about the show. There's already people talking about it. There are some that are saying visually very compelling, as it should be, because it's one of the most expensive shows ever made. They spent maybe billions, but definitely millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars on this show. And it better look good. I mean, honestly, it better look amazing. But will it captivate the actual Tolkien audience? Like the people that have read the books and watched the movies and really appreciate the Tolkien that was there. Like if you read the books, it feels like Tolkien. And if you watch Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, he's so sensitive to the books that Tolkien still comes through in those movies. Not as much in the Hobbit movie that Peter Jackson made, but definitely in the Lord of the Rings. It comes through, and I hear so little about Tolkien in anything coming out about this new show that I can't believe that it's going to have any relevance really for actual Tolkien fans. I just don't. I just don't think it's really going to appeal to them ultimately. I think some of the diversity and ideological things that are forced into the show that really don't have like a purpose behind them. They're just there because diversity, or they're there because strong females, which I'm sorry, Hollywood doesn't know what a strong female is. Like, there's plenty of strong females in Tolkien stories. There's plenty of strong females shown in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit series. Not as much in the Hobbit, but in Lord of the Rings, you had very strong female characters that were done with grace and were done where they don't make the females into Karens. I'm sorry, because if like too many females act like men, it feels like a Karen. It doesn't feel like a strong female. It feels like an annoying person. that's I feel like Hollywood has a terrible habit of making annoying women instead of painting them with such beauty and grace and strength that doesn't always come from their abilities with a sword. That doesn't always come from their abilities to like arm wrestle a guy and win. Like, this is how Hollywood tries to paint women as equal to men. And it's like, yes, you are equal, but your strengths are in other places that aren't bodily. And I don't understand why females need to be bodily as strong as men. It doesn't make any sense to me and I know as a guy, you're probably not allowed to be talking about this, but like, dude, why does it have to be that a woman is able to beat a man in a sword fight or a boxing match or a wrestling match or a race up the mountain, or I don't know. I just like, that's the only way they know how to show strength in women. And I don't know if that's because they just don't know what a strong woman is. And so they're just trying to grasp at straws at what they think a strong woman might be. I don't know. But I don't see this show doing much except divide the Tolkien community more. And it's already divided the community. There's the people that are already praising the show and they haven't even seen it yet, and they're going to praise every episode, and they're going to find the good parts and the beautiful cinematography and point to that and ignore the story and just be blind to that because whatever, politics, I guess. I don't know. And then there's going to be people that watch it just to crap on it. And I admit that I am one of those people, but I don't want to be. I want to give everything a fair shake. So maybe the show will be surprisingly good in its storyline. I don't see that happening, but I don't know. I definitely have been wrong more than once in my life, and I could be wrong again. So, yeah. But yeah, so that's the Rings of Power. Maybe you can go watch that tomorrow after it comes out and tell me what you think about it. I don't know if I could watch it. Honestly, like, I know a lot of people that are watching it in order to make like hit piece videos on it and on how bad it is. And like, I don't even, I get it because they're doing that so that you don't have to, is what they would argue. I don't know. If something's not good, I'd rather people not boycott it, but just not partake in it in order to show people like, hey, this wasn't really that successful. Like no one watched it. Like this show's going to be really successful because a lot of people that hate it are going to watch it to make fun of it or to knock on it. And I just don't think that's a great strategy, to communicate to Amazon or Netflix or any other network that are making things that we're just like, hey, you're not making quality. Disney Plus. I think we need to communicate better to these organizations what we like and what we don't like, and that does happen. Let me see. I just want to look something up real quick. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, so today is the 31st. Tomorrow is the 1st. Let me see. So I just want to look up something that I heard, and I just wanted to kind of see if it was true. Let's see. And this is in regards to the show. All right. Yeah, I just think this is an interesting fact that maybe doesn't have anything to do with anything, but I think it's interesting. So like I said, there's not a lot of Tolkien that I've heard in the conversation. And every time that he's brought up, it's brought up within a context of needing to like expand upon or move past or interpret differently Tolkien's work. It's never been like we want to stay as true to Tolkien as humanly possible. It's always Tolkien, I think if he was alive would have evolved, and I think he would have thought differently, and I don't think he would have, honestly. He was actually pretty rigid in a lot of his beliefs. So, I don't think he would have evolved. I don't think he would have changed. I think he was pretty secure. Okay, so for the US, the show is coming out Thursday, September 1st. So at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Thursday, September 1st. UK fans will watch it on September 2nd. And the reason I just wanted to look up the date that it's being released is because, and I heard this and it is true, so the date that J.R.R. Tolkien died was September 2nd. I don't know if they did it to honor Tolkien. It seems weird to release something that you really, aren't trying to attribute to Tolkien, even though it's his life's work very much. But you're releasing this new show on his death, the anniversary of his death. I mean, like, it would be one thing if they released the show on the date that, the Silmarillion was published or the Lord of the Rings was published. Like that type of thing where you're like, oh, it's a callback to that type of thing. But to choose the date of Tolkien's death as the date of releasing the show, it follows the narrative of we need a new or a rebirth of Tolkien's work for a modern age, for a modern world, for a new audience. And I don't know. That could be nothing. It seems weird though. It seems very weird that they would choose the day that Tolkien died to release their show. I don't know. I don't know. And in the scheme of things, who cares? Because I could still watch Lord of the Rings. I could still watch, I can still read the books. And this doesn't really change anything, except it's such a waste of so many millions of dollars that could have been spent on an amazing actual adaptation that was true to Tolkien of the Silmarillion. And I think if it didn't have all this ideology, and I think if it didn't have all this stuff that they wanted to interject into the story, I think when Christopher Tolkien, who was Tolkien's son, I think if he was still alive and they came to him and they're like, hey, we wanted to be true to your dad's work as much as humanly possible. Here's what we wanted to do. I think he would have given the rights to more of the Silmarillion than what they were able to obtain the rights to, which I get it. They didn't obtain the rights to a lot of material, so they kind of had to embellish to make it a full show. Fine. But like, I don't know. Just the way that they condensed thousands of years of Middle-earth history into a show is weird. Made characters that there's hundreds of characters in these stories, and they had to make new ones for some reason. Diversity, inclusiveness. I don't know. I think it's just a shame. Again, I think I'm angry at this show because I am frustrated. I think that's the primary emotion. I'm just frustrated because we can't get good stuff. I was frustrated when Peter Jackson made the Hobbit movies because of freaking Alfred in those movies was so stupid, and they ruined Bard, which was one of my favorite characters from the book, and there were just so many things wrong. The way Thorin acted, there's just so many elements that were visually appealing and cool, and you were like, oh, there's Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings coming through in those movies. And like, I thought that Martin Freeman as Bilbo in the Hobbit movies was fantastic. I just didn't think he was written that well, and I think they lost the storyline because the Hobbit story, it's in the title. It's The Hobbit. And you're supposed to follow, like, intimately his journey. But they had all of this, other stuff that they filled the movies with cutting to Gandalf and cutting to Radagast and cutting to, who else was on there? They brought back Azog, the Defiler. Even though he was dead, they brought him back to be a protagonist in the movie, and I just think it ruined the storyline. I don't think it did anything to really add anything to those movies. So, I was frustrated with those, and then to have the Rings of Power coming out that I'm not thrilled about now. It just sucks for the franchise because like Star Wars has kind of gone downhill, and I've talked about that in the past, how like I canceled Disney Plus because I was only watching Star Wars on there, and maybe Christmas movies. And then they just completely ruined that franchise from the sequel movies to the Book of Boba Fett show. And I could even critique, if I was really critical, the Mandalorian series. And yeah, it's just terrible track record. Marvel isn't really putting out anything of value right now. That franchise has sort of crapped out. It just stinks for all of these franchises. I know like DC Comics isn't really putting out anything of value, and they hired actors that were crazy people. You had Ethan Klein and you had Amanda Heard. Is that her name? Amber Heard. That are supposed to be characters in some of these DC comic movies. That ain't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. So it just stinks for franchises right now. You just don't really have any that are focused on stories, focused on the fans, like the actual fans. It's all about, because corporations just care about trying to form their movies and form their scripts to meet a wide audience instead of their loyal audience that are true to the comics, that are true to the lore, all of that type of stuff. They want to make it not acceptable. What's the right word? Applicable or appetizing to a large audience. And so you're going to sacrifice a lot of the storyline. You're going to sacrifice a lot of the character development. You're going to sacrifice a lot of the script. You're going to do a lot of stuff to just really take away from something that could have been great. It's not like, and that's what always really surprises me about a lot of the Marvel and especially Marvel and DC is that you have this like catalog of amazing stories that I think you own because you're Marvel or you're DC. So how you couldn't just pull from those catalogs and say this was a great story. Let's just, change a few things to make it film worthy and then just make that and then put that out. I don't know why you have to reinvent the wheel. Like it would be awesome to have live action forms of some of our favorite comics. But it just doesn't seem like they really want to do that. It doesn't really seem like they want to just give us good material. They want something new that has maybe a new message in it. And I don't know. I don't think people really want to be talked to in a movie. I think like if there's something to say, if there's something a bigger point to make through the film, do that through the story. But nowadays, like there has to be like these one-liners that are like, yes, 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 yes. Type one-liners that make people feel good that this movie did something. I don't know. Instead of just having the story convey that message, which is harder. You have to have good acting and good script writing and good character development and good story arcs that are able to impact people and get a point across. So maybe they're just lazy. I don't know. I think there's probably some directors that do want that and are for the stories and are for the character developments, but then producers get involved and production companies and they just are like, yeah, but we have these quotas. And we know they have these quotas because they've been very honest about this stuff in the movie industry and actors have talked about it. And, it's silly that you have to have a certain amount of characters of this color, or this race or this sexuality or this, I don't know, whatever is hot right now. You have to have that in your movies. So now these directors have to like weave these things in there so that they're noticeable enough for the producers, but hopefully don't take too much away from the story. And I don't know if I've talked about this in the past, but like those types of things, and I've seen it many times in shows, and where they'll just sort of insert something that like contextually doesn't, like if you were really to look at that character or that scene or that line that was given to a character, you would say like this doesn't have anything to do with the story. This was complete producer saying we need to say something about this, or we need to make this character gay, or we need to make a point about race here. And it feels like that very clearly. And so you're just, for me at least, I get so removed, like I'm so engaged in the story, and I'm very good at like suspending disbelief in order to engage and be drawn along by the showrunners or the storytellers, the directors in shows or in movies. I want that. That's why I sat down to watch that thing. And then I get pulled out so quickly when those inserts are made. It's just like, I don't know, you're watching something in one frame rate and then they just change it on you. And you're just like, everything's just distorted. Everything's just different now. And it's really difficult for me when it goes back to the regular story to come back in with them. Dude, you already like brought me out. I realized this isn't real life anymore. The fantasy, the jig is up. Like I can't get back into it now. And some people don't have problems with it, and some people are like, yeah, but it was still so good, the rest of it. Okay. But like, you don't need that. It's just there for some producer who wanted to meet a quota for their company. I don't know. I don't know. That whole industry is just kind of silly right now. I think that whole industry is just kind of hopefully though it's changing. Hopefully it's getting to a point where there's a bug just landed on my table. I can't see. Doesn't matter. You can't see. Ah, there it is. I kill you. I killed it. Anyways, I think that there is some changes around the corner, hopefully, in the movie industry, especially just with the success of certain things and the lack of success with others. Like a lot of people like to point to Top Gun, for example. Here was a movie that was just a good story, not great, good acting, not great, and no message. Like, was it patriotic? Yeah. You know, did it make you feel good to be an American and make you feel good about our military and you know, supporting veterans and things like that? Yeah. But they did it through the story. There was never a line, there was never a scene that was centered around that message. It was just a part of the whole story. It was a part of the whole movie. The infrastructure, the foundation of it was that. So you just felt it the whole time and you left feeling that. They didn't have to force it on you. And people felt good about that, I think. I think people felt, I don't know, like they didn't get like, it just feels kind of not dirty, but like it just feels like I was a part of someone's messaging. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where somebody was like randomly making a point about something and you're sitting there like, I don't know what they're doing. Okay, sure. And you just feel uncomfortable because you had to just sit there and like shake your head yes while someone like virtue signaled or someone, you know, tried to show how incredibly empathetic or compassionate or great or whatever they are. And I'm like, okay, cool. Good for you, man. Or gal. A lot of times it's girls. Women, whatever you want to be called. I don't know. But yeah, I think it might be changing because you see stuff like that and you see Top Gun do so well in the box office. Producers have to be looking at that and go, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. The Terminal List, I talked about that show on Amazon. Like, so I'm not against Amazon. I think Amazon has put out some really good stuff. I think, you know, all of these streaming providers are sort of getting their feet wet when it comes to shows and putting out content that people actually want to watch. And the Terminal List, for example, is the most watched show. I don't know if it's the most watched show ever. It's up there though. I mean, it's got like 2 billion streams, I think, which is unheard of, especially for an Amazon show. Like, none of their shows have done that well. Like, it literally had more views in one season than 3 seasons of The Boys, which is a really popular show on Amazon. So that show is definitely going to get a second season, as it should. And if it doesn't, then I might be coming to you and being like, hey, remember what I was saying, that maybe like these things are going to be looked at by the industry and they're going to make some changes based on that. Then I'd come back to you and say, I was wrong. I was wrong about that. But we'll see. I don't know. Hopefully things be a changing. Things be a changing. All right. I don't think I have anything else to talk about. That was like the only thing that's happening soon that I thought was interesting and that I thought was worthy of discussion. But yeah, there's nothing really that else that has been on my mind or that I've been interested in going deeper into. So I'm going to sign off here. Hope you all have been having a great week so far and will continue to have that great week for the rest of the week and weekend. And I will see you hopefully either on another Wednesday where we go live, or I do plan on starting up podcasts again so that we're putting out content a little more regularly, getting these conversations out, developing, growing, and deciding to be better in our lives. So, love you all. Hope you have a great night. And I'll see you next time.